So this is a request from the United Nations General Assembly to the International Court of Justice to consider the legal obligations of states with regards to protection of the climate for current and future generations. That's one question being asked of the court. And the other question is, what are the obligations of states to address the impact of climate change, which is already happening?
If I may add to what Alyn said, I think the resolution is all what he said, but also it's a fantastic and inspirational journey of a group of young people from the Pacific Island states, bringing a huge campaign of the challenges that they face on a day-to-day basis to the realization of the highest assembly in the world, which is the United Nations General Assembly, and then getting over 130 member states of this assembly agree without anyone objecting through consensus to take this question to the International Court of Justice. So this I see also as a fantastic intergenerational partnership and solidarity, and possibly the most important case ever to go before the International Court of Justice. I think the re-emphasis of the urgency is also important because our time is really running out. And I think it's been felt across the planet, irrespective of one's in global south or the global north, from drought to floods, which is affecting the livelihoods as we know it, but it's also affecting the other species on the planet. So it's really an opportunity for the human species as one species on the planet to take on their responsibilities to each other and to the wider species on the planet and to future generations. And we call also this in the legal conceptual basis Earth trusteeship. And it matters, therefore, for the climate change litigation at the highest court in the world to take this global issue at stake and advise what needs to be done immediately.
What we'll see, when we have a good decision from the court on the climate issue, which I believe we will get a good decision from the court, because all the law paints in that direction, the science paints in that direction, we will get a good decision from the court that will help enable the positive forces within governments who want to move forward but find it difficult because they've got the counter forces of the fossil fuel industry, for example, and the agriculture industry, the transport industry, all sort of saying you can't go too fast, you can't go too fast. But now they'll have the decision from the court say we have to. So it'll really strengthen the arm in governments of the progressive elements that want to move forward. So the resolution in the UN General Assembly had to be led by governments, because it's governments who can propose resolutions, that can co-sponsor resolutions and can vote for resolutions. And so here, Vanuatu was taking the lead in the beginning and then got a group of 17 other countries, co-sponsors. My country, New Zealand, was one of those. But the impetus for it came from Pacific Island students fighting climate change and World's Youth for Climate Justice. And these young people were putting forward that we need to do this for now, for our generation. Our generation is being impacted by this, and the next generation will be impacted by this. So our voices are important. But what's impressed me is that many of these young people from the Pacific Island students and World Youth for Climate Change are young lawyers or young law students. And they have been doing not just the voice of youth, they've been pulling together the legal arguments and doing very well. They've been learning about political process. And so they've been exploring from how we did the case against nuclear weapons and learning the lessons from there and utilizing those. So it's been very much a partnership between youth and the lead countries in taking this forward.
Because I think all of the laureates are working on various elements of bringing about a better world on one side. And on the other side, there are intergenerational elements to this. For example, I don't want to put Alyn on the spot, but I am going to do it because Alyn connects, for example, a quarter of a century ago. Alyn was part of taking what we know today as the legality and the threat to use of the nuclear weapons to the International Court of Justice, which at that time was the most important case to go before that court. And then we have Right Livelihood Laureate Judge Christopher Weeramantry, who passed away 6 years ago, who was the vice president of the court at that time, and coming out with some outstanding, how should I say, reasoning in his decision, which we, dissented in that case. And a quarter of a century later, here we have Alyn again connecting with the young group of people coming from the Pacific Islands taking this case. But they're also looking at the precedents and the wisdom that Judge Weeramantry has left in that court and that time.
So the cases are in the court now. The court has invited all member states of the United Nations, because it was the United Nations General Assembly which asked the question. So all member states are able to put their comments, their information, their submissions, their perspectives into the court in written submissions, and they have until October the 20th to do that. So we're encouraging governments to put in very ambitious comments and statements. This is the opportunity now to go beyond just what you can do in a nation state, but to what collectively we can do in the world to protect the climate for future generations.
You see the convergence of kind of the legal, socio-economic movements with youth and young people's movements, the environment movements, and the scientific movements coming together, because the law is there, the science is available, and obviously they have to work in partnership. So what next is the requirement, the political realization that we can't postpone this any longer, and it is now, and we need to act immediately.